Sounds good. I will call the meeting to order. We'll start off with just roll call for attendance. McKee here. Bodema.
Here.
Nichols.
Here.
Schultz.
Here.
Thomas.
Here.
Perfect. Pledge of Allegiance. Do we have a flag somewhere? How are we doing it? Perfect. I'll invite everyone to stand and join me in the pledge. Oh, and look down there. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for
which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sorry, my headphones yanked out there, so I was doing it without hearing anyone else. Alrighty. Agenda approval. Brad, do you want to walk us through that and any changes from staff?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor and Council. A couple items I want to walk through. For those who have not joined us on Zoom before, we have a couple of public comment periods. The first is open forum, and that's typically for anything that's not on the agenda. I will also add, I know there's one person who wanted to speak on one of the items on the consent agenda, so that would also be the time to speak. There's not a public comment period for the consent agenda. So open forum for items not on the agenda and for the consent agenda. And then we have public comment opportunities at the business items as well. The planning business as well as new business, there is no unfinished business. I will note one significant change for the packet tonight or the meeting tonight is that Wright Hennepin submitted a letter asking to table their application until the April 22nd meeting. So that is the action of the council tonight on that item, will be to table that item until April 22nd, 2021. So I guess I would just respectfully ask that rather than take a half an hour's worth of comment on something that's no longer going to be on the agenda, that those could be held until it's back on the agenda. And they're going to use this time to reassess their application and also to potentially look at other options as well. So that's a significant change for the agenda. I know many people are here probably for that. So
Brad,
that's the only item I have.
can we move that up in the agenda so those people that are on here specifically for that item can be rest assured that that's taken care of? And then, not that you wouldn't want to see the rest of the city council meeting, but in the interest of their interest, I guess, we could move that to the front of the agenda just to take care of it.
Mayor and Council, you certainly can. It is the first item after the consent agenda. So just would depend whether you want to take that action to table it before you open the public comment period, and then people will know that the action has been taken. So that's up to you all, whatever order you want to do things in.
That's fine with me if it's fine with the rest of the council. Is that what you were thinking, John, moving it before consent?
Yeah. Then we can wait on, we don't have to worry about public input. We can just have that be tabled for now. I think that'd be helpful.
That works.
In agenda approval, should we do a motion to table item 8A until April 22nd? Is that the procedure?
When we get to that, which we're, I guess, about to once we approve this, then yes.
Yeah, correct. I would do it in two separate motions, the agenda approval and then action on 8A separately.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, then I'll make a motion to approve the agenda with the change to moving 8A up before the consent agenda, was it? Or were and I believe that was the only change then. Yeah.
I second that.
Perfect. We'll just do a roll call vote. McKee, aye. Bodema.
Aye.
Nichols.
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye.
Thomas.
Aye.
That carries 5-0. Commission representatives, real quick. We got Jim Shulock and Val Nybo from the from Planning and Parks and Trails, respectively. So I think they're both on. Thanks for joining us. If there's anything in your guys' wheelhouse, feel free to speak up. And then now we want to do 8A now, right? that what we decided?
Are we doing open forum first?
Oh yeah, thank you. Sorry about that. So Jessica, open forum if you wanna
Perfect.
raise your hand and Jessica will call on you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mayor and Council. If you're interested in speaking at open forum, you can press the *9 button if you're on your phone, or if you're speaking or joining us via either tablet or a computer, you can click on the participants button and then raise your hand button that will come up there.
Just if I may,
Sure.
I think for me, it's under the reactions button, the raise hand
Oh,
function.
sure. I think it depends on the device. So under reactions or participants. It does look like we have a hand raised. Kathy, I'm going to go ahead and ask to unmute if you want to go ahead and state your name and address for the record.
Hello, my name is Kathleen Dickinson. I live at 19725 Hunters Ridge. We've been residents of Corcoran for about 22 years. And thank you very much for listening to our concerns. I'd like to provide a little background on why we're here tonight. Our lot is about 3.8 acres, and at this time, we have farmer fields on the east and the south sides. We realized when we purchased this property, this would not last forever, but we've enjoyed every day that it has. A couple of years ago, we were told the land to the east of us had been sold for the Bellwether development, and we would be getting 420 new neighbors. This is not how we imagined our rural Corcoran life would be, but it is what it is. Soon we discovered that developers intended to use our short street as an extended driveway to over 200 homes in their development, so their customers could access County Road 116. Obviously, that raised red flags on our street of just 6 homes. We brought our concern to the council, but it was decided the development would continue as planned and Bellwether would be using Hunters Ridge as an exit. They did not see any compromise as possible. Now we forward a couple of years and we were notified on February 11 that a new city well was being considered on a 2-lot subdivision. Again, not our choice for new neighbors, but upon further investigation, and by that I mean finding information on page 48 of a 99-page document, this structure intent is to use Hunter Ridge for its primary access to the project upon its completion. I understand that Hennepin County has allowed a temporary driveway on County Road 116 during the construction. Certainly, it should be the responsibility of the project to work with Hennepin County so that Hunters Ridge is not the permanent access for industrial traffic. I think you'd agree it makes no sense, except it's the easiest and possibly the cheapest solution for the developer. Hunters Ridge has already been the cheapest and the easiest solution for a housing developer. We suggest finding an alternate solution to be determined before proceeding on this project. Also in the plan for the city's wells is the ghost plot, which illustrates plots for multiple small lots in our development. This piece got all of our neighbors' attention. We now understand that the ghost plot is just ideas to imagine what might happen. And the neighbors on Hunters Ridge would appreciate a reimagining of that land, so any improvement on it would reflect for any new neighbors, whenever that would happen, and so they could enjoy what we've worked hard to create in Corcoran on Hunters Ridge, that being fewer homes and larger, beautiful lots. Our hope is that the future developers would continue with this tradition. That being said, I don't intend to focus tonight. But finally, I'd like to say welcome to the new members of the council and welcome back to returning members and staff. Keeping promises made during an election must be a difficult task. The slogan "Shaping Corcoran's Future" is what we hope we are helping to do, so others existing neighborhoods know they will not be sacrificed without their input being seriously considered, and together there could be solutions that can be found. We're counting on you to help us shape our future. And I want to thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jessica, Gary also has something to add. Can he do that now?
Sure. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
Name and address.
Okay, this is Gary Dickinson, also at 19725 Hunters Ridge. And my chief concern really is having this industrial driveway from the new well or the new water treatment plant really coming into a residential neighborhood. This driveway will transport large equipment, large machinery, and vast quantities of chemicals into this place. It would seem to me, well, also this road will be closed during the spring because of road restrictions. That may be an issue for that plant. But to me, it makes more sense that that type of facility, that industrial type of facility, would be better serviced from a county road instead of a small residential road. I spoke with Jason Gottfried from Hennepin County, and their primary concern is really the number of accesses on 116. Perhaps a better option may be to move the farm driveway over to Hunter's Ridge instead of the water treatment plant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Mayor, we do have another hand raised. Jason
good.
Bartles. If I'm going to go ahead and ask to unmute, if you could give us your name and address for the record.
Hi, Jessica. Thanks. I unmuted. Can you hear me all
Oh,
right?
yes, I can. Thank you.
All right. Very good. Jason Bartles, 19795 Hunters Ridge. Thank you for allowing us to participate in the Zoom meeting. Thank you, Mayor and council members. Good evening. I'd also like to speak briefly tonight about the Hunters Place Second Edition regarding County Road 116. The specific concern addressing is, as Gary and Kathy mentioned, the roads and Hunters Ridge versus 116. When we looked at the resolution as written states when Lot 2 further subdivides, a new public street will be required. What if Lot 2 doesn't subdivide? The resolution reads as though that has already been predetermined. Was Hennepin County told if Lot 2 subdivides, the city will build a new road, or when Lot 2 subdivides, the city will build a new road? In reading and rereading the resolution, Hunters Ridge residents, including myself and my wife Diane, get a great deal of when feelings and very little if feelings. We are hopeful existing Hunters Ridge development covenants regarding lot sizes and number of structures will be respected and upheld, and they would effectively disallow for the subdivisions represented on the ghost plot, which we understand to be a hypothetical scenario at this time. We also agree with Dickinson's and our other neighbors that other road options need to be considered. If the existing farmer driveway, Mr. Lothar, was simply rerouted south to Hunters Ridge, that would allow adequate distance on 116 to allow for plant access and comply with county guidelines. We're curious if that option was proposed to Mr. Lothar or considered by the city. County Road 116 is clearly much better suited to take the plant traffic directly versus routing it down residential Hunters Ridge. Diana, I'd like to thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. At this time, no one else has raised their hand.
Okay. Let's give it just a couple seconds just to make sure. But if that is it, then we will go on to what was 8A for the Right Hennepin substation. Sorry, I'm kind of making these adjustments on the fly here. Is Kendra on? Perfect. If Kendra, if you want to present that now, and then we'll get into that.
Certainly. We received a letter from Right Hennepin, as Brad indicated, asking that this item be tabled to the February 22nd meeting. Excuse me, to the April 22nd meeting so that they can evaluate comments from the Planning Commission and Council as they move forward with their plat. So we do recommend that you table the item to allow them to continue to evaluate the substation opportunities.
Sounds good. Is there any discussion from council? Anyone have thoughts on if we want to move that to what was the April 22nd meeting, correct?
Mr.
Correct.
Mayor,
Yes.
I have a technical question.
Go right ahead.
If they pull this from the agenda, does it stop that if we get an application and we don't address it within 60 days, I think it automatically passes, or does this pause that? Does it stop it? Do they start all over? How does that happen? What happens?
I would let Kendra probably has the better answer, but I believe it would be us exercising the 60-day extension, the one-time 60-day extension to push it out to, I think it would be like May 5th, but the closest council meeting before that would be the April 22nd meeting.
That is correct, Mr. Mayor. We have already written the letter extending that additional 60 days, so it does end on May 4th.
So when was the 60 days then originally?
I believe it was March 5th in the email that I saw today.
Okay, so the time frame, the distance between that council meeting and the 60-day extension is the same as if it were today.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. I have a question again related to the timelines and the extension, right? Why would they just not pull back the application and just come back in when they're ready versus us exercising our 60-day extension option?
Kendra, do you want to answer that one?
I'm sorry, the question was why we're extending it 60 days?
I know, in the sense, I thought I heard that we are exercising our option of extending it for 60 days, right? Versus have them pull the application and come back in when they're ready and we restart the clock.
Well, because we have under the state law, we actually have 120 days right out of the gate for the preliminary plat, but the zoning items, the variance and the administrative permit only have a 60-day clock. So we extend it often. We'll take the second 60 days. So there's nothing unusual about that. And they've asked for the time to evaluate for the application they have in front of them, what they've heard so far. So there would be no need to withdraw as they're continuing to evaluate the site and the comments they've received. They would not want to withdraw. They want to keep this site as a potential application.
Okay.
So absent of withdrawal, then, could we, in theory, decide to have a conversation and a vote anyways?
Tonight?
I don't think it'd be
Yeah.
pertinent to have a discussion on it without the presentation and the applicant and all that stuff here.
Yeah, but if they didn't withdraw, it's still on the agenda. We haven't removed it from the agenda.
Correct, but in theory, what we could be discussing could be radically changed already in their minds, and we could be discussing things that would just be a waste of time. I'd rather discuss it based on an applicant and an application that's before us, so we have hard facts we're discussing.
I would agree. It seems.
I'm not proposing that we discuss it. I'm saying hypothetically, since they didn't withdraw it, we could discuss it anyways and pass or fail the application, couldn't we?
I think so, hypothetically.
I mean, we could hypothetically talk about anything on an agenda or future agenda and deny things that aren't before us too, but why?
Well, the reason why you might do it is because we're 2 weeks from, I just want people to think about this. We're 2 weeks from actually having the application pass automatically if we don't take action on it. Whereas if we discuss it and deny the application, then that clock would start all over and we wouldn't always be under this 2 week time frame. So all I'm saying is hypothetically, if we debated it and voted tonight, it would restart the clock for the application, and then that would give everybody more time.
Well, if we denied it, they'd have to reapply, wouldn't they, and go through the whole process of the application? They'd have to pay more additional fees and whatnot to reapply, and wouldn't we just have to reevaluate?
Yeah, I guess I'm
By extending the letter, don't we automatically get the 60 days?
We're still 2 weeks from the decision then.
No, we'd be pushing it out another 60 days.
But
So
Okay,
we're saying all the same
again,
options. as
so
we
the
did-
catch is if you extend it 160 now, you don't have another extension. This is it, right? When they come back, we are up against the clock. Versus
I believe we wouldn't have another extension. I think they could still, if they for some reason needed another extension, could do so at that time. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I think so.
I mean, so we're giving up. So as far as the city, we'll give up the leverage of an extension. They do have an option, even if they do. But we are ending up giving up our leverage of an extension request because
yes,
they decided to table it today. It's
Yes.
just something we have to call out. I get what Alan's
Yeah.
saying. We are going to debate on something we don't even know, right? Because they might come back with a separate location, and we might be rejecting
Right.
something that's not even hypothetical, but comical, right? But the thing is, it's a time. It's time, and it's a timeline. And do you want to give up your leverage? With time, you don't know what the council is going to go through at that time when they come back. You don't know what's going to hit our agenda at that time. What if we don't have time? So that's why I brought that up.
So is the concern that we'd be in a similar position if, let's say, if nothing changed and at that meeting on the 22nd, we're about the same distance out from the time running out, and we would essentially be in the same spot without that option to extend? That's the concern?
yes.
Okay.
They've asked us to extend instead of they themselves withdrawing the application. They're
Right.
putting the onus on us rather than they themselves doing it. So part of what has happened in the past in this body is that we will be pushed to that very end of the time frame, and all of a sudden, let's just say that we ask for, I don't know, let's just pretend that we ask for 25 trees. We decide that we want to have 25 extra trees between the power station and the houses. And we've got to have emergency meetings if it reaches a certain time frame. And if we don't approve it or disprove it, it automatically passes if we don't vote on it one way or the other. So what we're giving up is the opportunity that if we come back later and something doesn't fit exactly what we're trying to do, then we don't have the ability to say, we're going to extend this vote out while we look at some other things. They are making us give up that option instead of just withdrawing the application and start, it's not like you're starting over, it's a submission again. So in this case, it's a contentious item, and we might be able to come up with something in the future that can alleviate some of that contention. But if we think of something and it has some work to do, all of a sudden we're up against a time frame. Whereas if we don't get if we don't get agreement on those things from the applicant in time and vote on it as a council, then the original application must pass as is.
Yeah, but I think, John, I think we're pushing it out 60 days. We still have the option to either decline it or approve it with amendments at that 60-day mark. But if you outright decline it now, you're declining it based on an incomplete application, which you don't know what changes are in their head.
They should have, if they wanted to bring it off the table, they should themselves have brought it off the table instead of putting the onus on the council, because it reduces our ability to negotiate changes in the application in the future.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Just a point of clarification. So if the council extends this, tables it to April 22nd, you can continue to discuss this. And as far as, reaching out to the applicant, suggesting to staff what changes you want to see, you now have 60 more days for this specific site to provide feedback on how to make it better. You don't have to wait till April 22nd to provide additional feedback. You can reach out to Bob anytime. If they choose a different site, they have to start all over again. So if this only small portion would have the extension for it. If they change anything to a different site, even on the same lot, different area of this lot, they have to submit a whole new application. So I would argue that by tabling it, you now have 60 more days to think specifically about this site and reaching out to Right Hennepin, directing staff what you'd like to see. I don't think it puts it in a corner whatsoever.
Okay. Well, John, what would you think? I mean, do you have something in mind in terms of a motion? If
No, all I wanted to do is bring people's attention to the fact that if we ourselves direct staff to extend it by 60 days, we're giving up something for that. That's all. If
Gotcha.
everybody's fine with that, we
No,
can
and
proceed and vote and put it off, but we shouldn't, if an applicant chooses to change their application based on new information or just losing a 0-5 vote at planning, it shouldn't be on the city to extend the application. The applicant should withdraw and go back to the drawing board on their own application. I think it does reduce our leverage.
I think the only way we'd be at a disadvantage is if we inadvertently made a mistake of tabling it and not putting it back on the agenda
Sure.
on that April meeting. Or at the April meeting, we take a vote and table it again, in which case it automatically becomes approved at that point. But I would believe at the April meeting, we'll have the foresight to include it on the agenda. And I think we have enough sound minds here to actually take a vote up or down on it. I don't think we'd table it.
Jess or Brad, a question to both of you procedurally. Assuming it comes back on, does there have to be a minimum number of councillors voting on it? Like you need to have 3 out of 5, 4 out of 5 to get this approved when this comes back in?
Mr. Mayor, to answer that question, yes, the preliminary plat, the variance, and the administrative permit are a simple majority, a 3 to 3/5 vote of the council.
Okay.
I also just want to clarify, I might not have been as clear as I thought. Today, when we received their letter requesting it, we did extend the review period an additional 60 days. And just in terms of procedure, because of the way our meetings fall, it's very common that our submittal application deadline and the council deadline are 61 days apart. So it's very, very common that the first day something comes in, we take that second extension. So it's not out of character for a planning application to immediately take that second 60-day extension just because of the way our calendar falls with our meetings. And in this case, today we sent the letter extending the deadline to May 4th.
Gotcha.
Fair enough. And normally that would be completely fine, Kendra. I mean, not something that got back to 05, right, in the planning commission. That's one. And the second thing, the reason I asked you about the majority is it's tabled on 22nd, we come back in and 3 of us are not here. What happens then? Gets auto-approved because you don't have a simple majority count on the council on that day?
Well,
But 3 of us are not. Yeah, we don't have a quorum.
We'd have to
Need
schedule
3.
out. I'm not, in my, nearly 8 years here, it hasn't been a problem. So I'm pretty confident we'll make it work.
We've come close we have come close to having these automatically pass, and we couldn't negotiate or couldn't come to an agreement, and we had to kind of throw in the towel and just accept no more negotiations, because if we asked for something and they didn't want to deliver, it would have automatically passed. And for people at home, I'm sorry, this is stale, dry, and non-consequential, but one of the things that we want to be is technically solid on our decision making, not necessarily for this case, but we have had incidences where an application goes to the final hour, not literally, but where we had to make an up-down vote without being able to negotiate at a city council meeting. And I just don't want to have that, because it is obviously it went 05 at commission is not a very popular idea. I don't want them deciding they want us to extend this to put us in a position where we wouldn't be able to negotiate a better deal for our citizens. That's all.
Yeah, no, that's completely fair, and I agree. Would we be able to, and or would anyone be interested in if we tabled it to, let's say, the first meeting in April to decide then, and that way we have a little bit more time in case something crazy happens.
I'd rather give the applicant the extra 15 days to listen to the concerns that the council can discuss with them, whether on the phone or however you want to do it, or citizens can convey to council and we can express those concerns. So I don't think it's going to be an issue down to the days personally. I don't see it.
All that being said, I'm fine with the extension, Tom. We just
Okay.
gotta know what potentially could happen.
Right.
So Mayor, it's the same here, right? I just want to make sure that we are aware of what we're doing. I know it sometimes it's procedural. We just go through the extensions, but what it means 60 days later, right? It's good to just have this debate on, and then, people who have logged in today to listen to this debate know that in 60 days, what are we going to be up against? I would like to keep a little bit of buffer in the end. Like you suggested, maybe do it the previous meeting. I do also know that we have a structure around what the major business and how we structure that around council meetings. So I would rather have a little bit of time in the end, but if we have to vote on it today for extension, I should be fine too.
Okay. Well, even if we tabled it to whatever that first meeting is in April and conversations were ongoing on whatever the plan ends up being, couldn't we then still table it to that next meeting before that would be the only meeting left before the 60 days hits? It'd be a little unorthodox, but gives us.
You can do it. You're just taking more staff time and taking something else off the agenda that needs to be addressed at that time. So it's something to think about.
But it's going to be the
Mayor.
same amount of staff time whether it be, maybe it'd be the staff time on the 3rd rather than on the 14th.
They'd have to prepare a packet, and then if you tabled it again, I'm saying, if you tabled it again to the second meeting after the first meeting, then they've got to redo their packet and add new information and whatever came out of the first meeting. So
at that time, I would just go ahead and reject it. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, just to throw in here, first, don't worry about staff time. We'll get it done. I guess my main question is, what more information do you need if the exact same application comes back with no changes or minor changes? Because if they're major, they have a new submittal, right? So if you have an extreme lack of information necessary to make a decision, certainly let us know and we can work on that. But that's not what I've heard from the council, from what I've talked about.
Right.
So I guess I think we're making maybe a bigger deal out of this than it entirely has to be. It's a variance regarding a lot size. And I know all of you have put hours and hours and hours into this. So if there's significant information that needs discussion from the council, that would make sense. But other than that, I don't worry about it from the staff.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
It appears the applicant had his hand raised for a moment. Maybe we should check with him.
Okay.
Add anything to the conversation.
Absolutely.
Yes, hi, this is Bob Sandberg. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, I just want to address a couple of things. One, to the point of, with regards to the tabling it, we worked with city staff on that. What we came up with was this the best solution, just to really allow us to dig into, try to develop the response and the information based off the discussions we had with all of you in the past week. We really do need that time to the April 22nd meeting. We would not be able to get it done in that first meeting, because that's just right around the corner to be able to turn around and get a packet. Our intent is to, follow up with all those comments and questions. It really puts onus on us to John's question about, we need to provide, a solution that you can vote on, so that there's, it's not a negotiation. It's not that concern about going past that. So we're committed to that. And I just wanted to put that out there, that we're going to work with staff. We will be there ready to answer and follow up with you guys if you have any additional questions. But really, we felt this was in the best interest for all, to really be able to allow for the conversations and the discussions you guys were looking for when we were posed different questions, which we didn't have available, and we didn't have the responses ready.
Gotcha. Thanks, Bob. So
Thanks, Bob.
I guess it's, does someone want to make a motion to table it to that the April 22nd meeting, or?
I'll make the motion to table it to the 22nd.
Okay. We have a second?
I'll second it.
Perfect. We'll do a roll call vote. McKee, aye. Bottoма?
Aye.
Nichols?
Aye.
Schultz?
Aye.
Thomas?
Aye.
Carries 5-0. All right, good discussion, guys. We got there in the end, but you raised some good points, everyone. So I'm glad we kind of went through all of that, and we'll continue to work with Right Hennepin, and I'm fairly certain they'll be responsive to any questions or concerns that any of us have with them, and work with us throughout the whole process. So I think that'll work out. Now we are back to consent agenda, consisting of items A through J. Does anyone want to pull anything?
Mayor, I'd like to pull item C.
C, okay.
Pull item G.
And H as well, please.
All right. Then if there's nothing else, I will entertain a motion to approve consent agenda items A, B, D, E, F, I, and J.
So moved. Bottoма.
Second, Schultz.
All right, roll call vote. McKee, aye. Bottoma?
Aye.
Nichols?
Aye.
Schultz?
Aye.
Thomas?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Let's see here. The first one was C, the draft minutes of February 11th, 2021 council meeting. Jeremy, was that you that wanted to pull that?
Yeah, I have a minor correction on page 5 for the minutes.
Okay.
If you look 2/3 of the way down, I apologize, I can't really show you very clearly where this is. Sentence begins, council noted concerns in setting policy through allowing residents to dictate when a gravel road is transitioned to a paved road and impacts infrastructure planning in the city with setting this policy. I wanted to correct that. It was actually the inverse. The concern was that if we allow resident opposition to dictate a paved road becoming a gravel road, we would then be taking away a amenity that people potentially moved into the area expecting, without really maintaining that appropriately. So once road becomes paved, I feel we need to go beyond just a simple majority vote in that neighborhood as to whether it ever gets updated and resurfaced.
Thank you, Counselor. I can make sure we make that correction on that page.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Was there anything else with the minutes, Jeremy, or anyone else?
That was the only point that I had.
All righty. I don't have anything there. So I'll entertain a motion to approve consent agenda item, let's see here, I'm sorry, C.
So moved.
I'll second it. Oh, that works too. Roll call vote. McKee, aye. Bottoma?
Aye.
Nichols?
Aye.
Schultz?
Aye.
Thomas?
Aye.
Carries. All right. G, the preliminary plat for Hunter's Place, second edition at 10110 County Road 116. Let me find that here, actually. And who was it that pulled that? Was that?
That was me, Manoj.
Go right ahead if you.
Perfect. I know we heard some opinions in the public forum on this from people on that street. I had a conversation with Brad earlier today on this, on the ghost plat and what that means. And we got a few ifs and whens being called out today. So I just wanted to have a quick discussion on it so that, those who did call in and give opinion that, they hear from us. One was the ghost plat, right? So nothing's, by approving this plat, we are actually not giving us approval for subdivisions, and that it can be another 10 lots there. And neither did we not give them. So basically, even if we didn't split this into 2 lots, lot 1 and lot 2, they would still have the option of coming back and splitting this up. The plan did nothing to potentially subdivide lot 2 or not subdivide lot 2. So I just want to make sure we clear that approving this does not do anything to the subdivisions or potential subdivisions in that space. That will be a separate application when it comes. It'll go through the rigors of the planning commission and then come to the council for an approval. Want to make sure that we call that out and have a discussion around it.
No, I think you mean if it comes. There's
If it
no
comes.
application.
Absolutely. If it comes. I think that reference to that was because of the road, right? Saying that if it gets subdivided, there'll be roads developed, the city would require roads. I think that was also referred to in the initial opinion. I just want to make sure people realize that this approval, what we're giving, does not authorize subdivision, neither does it prevent it. It is as good as the initial request, right? It has to come, if it has to come back through this entire rigor, and nothing gets done today with respect to subdivisions.
Yep, it would be in just like any other subdivision that could happen. It would be its own process unrelated to this.
Yep, absolutely.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask a question?
Of course.
Kevin Mattson, I think, is on the line. And I think I want to give some light to what kind of traffic, I think there's an impression that it's an industrial plant with semi trucks going in and out. And I want to get an accurate depiction of what traffic is going to be like going in and out of that water plant. And because I've got some questions about that today, and I think they're asked to. Kevin, can you address that?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor and Council. We're still, as you guys know, we're still in the feasibility study stage, so not a lot of the details aren't ironed out. But to John's point, to categorize it as not a high traffic operation. A city staff, checking in their daily, pulling some samples, making sure it's operating quickly. Especially for an iron and magnesium plant. It's very minimal. It's really just kind of monitoring during construction. We would be proposing access off of County Road 116. So it's really minimal activity. I don't know if you've ever seen, any other, Maple Grove facility. It's really minimal activity. There would, there might be a small office there. But it really wouldn't house any staff. So it would just kind of be check in on it, make sure it's operating in accordance with what we should be doing for operating a water treatment plant. There is a little bit more activity if we were to go to a plant like lime softening, which, is part of the feasibility analysis potentially coming up. But that's still minimal, but that is an increase, a minor increase in traffic where we might have some truck coming in to dispose of some waste or something, maybe a couple, once every couple weeks or something. And it really depends over time. That would gradually increase, but it's not daily activity other than maybe a pickup truck. Does that provide some context?
Yeah, because when people hear plant, they think of like The Simpsons, where they're just big towers belching smoke and thousands of vehicles going in and out. It's more like it's just a well more than a plant. And I think the people on Hunter's Ridge kind of have been in the middle of this firestorm for like 4 years of development, as the caller mentioned. And I want to kind of give them a little bit of sanity on, what that's going to entail, and what a plant in the water world is like. That's all.
Yeah, I think that was a good thing to point out. And I would assume, or actually, I guess I know, to Kevin's point about, depending on what exactly is this, what features or what type of plant we end up, not plant or, sorry, of well or whatever you want to call it, we put in there, that would be something that's decided at a later date. It's not, again, part of this decision. So that's all stuff that you'd have time to get input in and hear about for, it's not like whatever we approve here is going to determine exactly what is there in terms of all those features, whether it's the softening or whatever. That would be a future discussion. So,
Mr. Mayor, can I recap?
sure.
So Manoj pointed out that the proposal that's before us today will not actually put a plat in place for the remainder of the lot. So we're not approving a development project on the remaining portions of this existing site. Per John and Kevin, the traffic level that we see going into this facility will be relatively light, and it will be coming off of 116. The only way that would change is if there's a subsequent development down the road that goes through all the same approvals that everything else does to redevelop the other portions of that lot. So it appears like the impact of the decision we're making today is relatively small, and long-term, it's not likely to get significantly bigger absent, much larger decisions we're making down the road.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question?
Of course.
This will allow Jeremy to recap again. Question for Kendra. And I'm going to ask in a general sense, not exactly specific to Hunter's Ridge Place, but if you have an existing development that has covenants, and then you're looking at splitting a lot in that development, how do those covenants interact with the city's ordinances is how you can split those lots? Do the covenants supersede city ordinances?
So the covenants are privately enforced. So from a city perspective, we don't get involved in enforcing covenants. I think that the private agreements, if there was a restriction on subdivision, the homeowners association could go to court to enforce. The city, though, will just be able to review against the adopted zoning ordinance.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I would assume Brian Lothar, even though his land touches Hunter Ridge, is probably not a member of the Hunter's Ridge Homeowners Association.
Yeah, and I guess I didn't really need to get into that far into the weeds, but I just wanted to bring it up so that people would know, because they raised the question about covenants and that point. So
they would probably have to go to court about it and get that taken care of before probably the applicant, anybody would apply to put houses on Hunter Ridge in one of the existing lots. Hypothetically speaking, I'm not an attorney.
Hypothetically, yeah.
Jeremy, you want to recap that?
You really want me to, but
I'm just teasing. I'm just teasing.
Is there anything else on this one, or are we all good with the recaps?
Good.
Okay.
All right.
I just wanted discussion on it. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you, Manoj.
I think that was good. Thank you, Manoj.
Yeah, definitely. Then I will entertain a motion to approve item 7G of the consent agenda.
I'll make the motion.
All righty.
Second.
Roll call vote. McKee, aye. Bottoма,
Aye.
Nichols,
Aye.
Schultz,
Aye.
Thomas.
Aye.
Carries 5-0. Last, we have 7H, interim use permit for accessory dwelling unit at 6330 Snyder Road. And was that you?
Yeah, yep. I just have a general question for staff on accessory dwelling units. Do we have any idea how many are in the city? And I know we don't have any type of rental ordinances, right? So basically anybody can live in an accessory dwelling unit. Is that correct? As long as the property owner still lives on site.
That's correct. The accessory dwelling unit says that the landowner needs to live in either the principal structure or the accessory dwelling units. They have to live on site. We do not have a rental ordinance. Fun question about how many ADUs we have. I can tell you we have one other one that was approved. But as we talked about at the Planning Commission, I believe there are a number of them that exist either before adoption of the ADU ordinance or without city approval.
Okay, thank you. I'll make a motion to accept it.
Quick, can I make a note to staff? Not related to, I mean, it came off the discussion that Alan just started off. I think we should make a note to look at a rental ordinance because of the new homes that's coming and the potential of those starting to get rented out more often. So it might be something that we want to look at as we look at our ordinances and things that we need to get done if you don't have one already.
It's too thick. It's not going to melt all the way through. It's too.
Sorry, I'm not sure.
I made a motion to accept, so
yeah, that's
just
what I
need a
thought.
second.
Yep, sorry. I'll second that. So is there anything further to discuss? Okay. Roll call vote. McKee, aye. Bottoма.
Aye.
Nichols.
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye.
Thomas.
Aye.
Carries 5-0. All right. Next up, planning business. We have a public comment opportunity. We already did 8A, so we will be moving on to 8B, which is the front yard setback variance at 20795 Larkin Road. And Kendra, it's all yours.
Mr. Mayor, do you want to have a comment period for this batch of items? We'd have
Yes, sorry about that.
7B, as you mentioned, 7C, which is a concept plan for Sherbert storage, and then 7D, which is the work plan for residential zoning ordinance updates.
Yes, thank you. I was just on autopilot there.
And those are items 8, B, C, and D. 8. So if you'd like to comment, feel free to use click the participants button and either use the functions or raise your hand function or button there, or you can press *9 if you'd like to raise your hand. Mayor, at this time, we don't have anyone raising their hand.
Okay. Let's see, 1 second.
I would like an opportunity to comment.
Sure. Could we get your name and address for the record?
And this is in regards to the next agenda item, so I don't know if I jumped the gun there, but I'm
No, that's just fine. Yep.
I'm the applicant, Nate Karanimi at 19927 Larkin Road. And my neighbor who did attend the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting in regards to this also wrote a letter. And I didn't know if that letter could be shared with the council. Maybe it already has. I'm just saying he took the time to write a letter. It certainly affects his property, and I didn't know if that'd be appropriate, if that letter could be read.
I know I have read it, and I would think that the rest of the council, did everyone receive it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I guess I just wanted to make the comment that in terms of the variance that we're requesting, I think there's, I kind of read through the staff comments, addressing each point of the factors that are considered in weighing a variance. And while I certainly respect the technical discipline of reviewing code and commenting on it, I would say that it almost seems more like the comments simply restate the definitions of the code and the ordinances. The short of it is that I'm asking for a variance to build my house in a way that does not interfere with anybody else's enjoyment of their property. In fact, I'm trying to build my house further away from my nearest neighbor, which, if you guys are familiar with the definition of the rural residential area in Corcoran, it's that, you know, people essentially want to have their space. I have 5 acres. I'm trying to build further away from my neighbor. And what's getting me hung up is the fact that I've created this house plan. We just welcomed our 5th child, and we need the space. That's part of the reason. I mean, we love where we live on Larkin Road now, but you know, we're out of space. So we're trying to build a bigger home. And it's absolutely inconceivable to me that anybody benefits from me not being able to build a larger home that I'm looking to build here. Now, if this council doesn't see the need for the variance, or doesn't wish to approve the variance, I still will build a house there. I saw one of the comments in there that says that economic, you know, essentially saving the applicant money is not a reason to grant a variance. That's not what we're talking about here. I'm going to build a house, a much smaller, more efficient home, if this variance isn't granted. So in terms of my construction costs, this will be a much smaller, tidier project if I cannot get my variance. But that said, you know, my wife and I and my family, you know, we've put a lot of work into this. We had an architect design the home. We've got it all staked out. It's ready to go. And I would say that the city benefits from granting this variance in terms of the tax base. My neighbor certainly benefits because I'm going to build further away from the property line and better utilize my 5 acres. This is the victimless crime, if you want to use that term. Everybody benefits from this variance.
I appreciate your comments. Let's see here. Do we want to, we'll continue, I guess, for if there's any other public comments about any of those items, and then we will get into the specific discussion on 8B, if that works for everyone.
Thanks, Dave.
Mayor, at this time, no one else is raising their hand.
Okay. Then, Kendra, do you want to present for 8B?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jessica has the slides for this one, so I'll give her a minute to pull those up just for reference. This is a setback variance at 20795 Larkin Road, which is a newly created lot. Next slide. To allow a 2.63 foot and a 12.35 foot front yard setback where 50 feet is required in the rural residential district. The 50 foot is the front yard setback from the private drive that was created to allow this subdivision. The applicant platted the 2-lot Larkin Road addition in 2019. Nate Karanimi is the applicant tonight. He was the applicant for the subdivision. The code requires frontage on a public street for all new lots. A few years ago, we modified the ordinance to allow an option for a less expensive private drive. So you can now create a private drive to meet the frontage requirements rather than a full public street. But it's still functioning as the front of the property and still requires that 50-foot setback from that private drive easement, just as it would require a 50-foot setback from the public street. That private drive provides the required frontage requirements for the new lot. Next slide. The Planning Commission reviewed this item at their February 18th meeting and voted 5-0 to recommend denial. One person spoke at the meeting on this item, as Nate said, his neighbor to the north, who's part of this subdivision. Next slide. Again, the city has a higher level of discretion in approving a variance. This is a different kind of request because the burden of proof is on the applicant to show that that all of the variance standards have been met. Next slide. This is the site in blue. It's the vacant lot that was created. The lot directly north is the second lot that was created as part of this plat. This was carved off from property to the east that Mr. Karanimi subdivided earlier from the parcel. This next slide is the image of the subdivision or of the zoning, excuse me. This is in the rural residential zoning district just outside of the MUSA on the south side of Larkin. Next slide. This image is the approved preliminary plat. There was a little confusion at the Planning Commission about the different drawings. So the purpose of this plat was to show that when the plat was approved, we required the applicant to show that there is a buildable space on the lot. They provided a 60 by 50 building pad. That's a pretty big pad for a new home. The Ravinia home pads that we see when they were coming in for final plats were smaller than that. And in my opinion, those are some pretty big homes. So a 50 by 60 house pad generally does provide a lot of options. But additionally, on the other side, south of the private drive, there's a lot of land in this 5 acre lot for a home to be built. Next slide. This image is from the applicant, and it does get a little confusing, but there are two house layouts. It's the same house plan, one in red and one in black, showing a little bit about how it can wiggle around. The red is the request, though, that they're asking for with the 2.5 foot setback on the south from the private drive and 12.35 on the east side on the private drive. And the north lot line setback is the required 25 foot setback. It's not further than the old house pad was showing. It's still a 25 foot setback, which is the minimum setback there. Next slide. And so the variance standards, there are variance standards outlined in the ordinance, 5 variance standards, and the applicant must show compliance with all of them. The Planning Commission found that the variance standards have not been met. Next slide. And we recommend adoption of resolution 21-18 as recommended by the Planning Commission, denying the variance.
Thank you, Kendra. I'll open it up to if anyone has any initial comments that they could start with the council.
I'll go ahead and start.
Okay.
I had a chance to review a nice guidance document from League of Minnesota Cities that talks about the official designation of what practical difficulties entails. And I believe Brad shared this with the council. So item 1 for practical difficulties was reasonableness. And what that boils down to is, do we feel as a council as though this is a reasonable use of the land? I'll quote here for a second. For example, the variance application for building too close to a lot line or does not meet the required setback. The focus of this factor is whether the request to place a building here is reasonable. The second is uniqueness. And in this context, what it seems to be indicating is that uniqueness essentially means it is not just the owner's preference or something in the land itself that's driving the request. And then the third was essential character, which is mirrored in our ordinances. And the guidance here from the league is that under this factor, consider whether the resulting structure will likely be out of scale, out of place, or otherwise inconsistent with the surrounding area. For example, when thinking about the variance for an encroachment into a setback, the focus is how the particular building will look closer to a lot line and if that fits in with the character of the area. So I think for me, I want to get a better understanding of how does the private drive differ from a driveway? Can Kendra or Brad speak to what's, aside from the fact there's a setback requirement, is there a functional requirement for the private drive that we need to consider as we try to decide whether this is a reasonable request or not?
Well, I think the private drive is different from a driveway in the sense that it serves more than one lot by definition, and that it exists in order to provide frontage for lots that would not otherwise be able to be created but for stubbing a new public street versus a new private drive. So the private drive is a way to provide, like I said, a less expensive way to provide frontage for a lot. And so it really does function the same way that the public street that would have been stubbed back there does. It provides access to these, in this case, just these two lots. In some cases, we have my private drives that provide access to 3, 4, or 5 lots.
Okay.
Does that?
That helps, yeah. In this particular case, it appears like the private drive terminates in this lot.
Correct.
Is there a chance that would ever get extended or need to be extended for further development other places?
There are no more development rights on this property, and the private, the private drive gets tied to the HOA that's created with the plat, so it is very unlikely that it could ever be extended.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I have a couple questions.
Go right ahead.
Kendra, can you go back to the images? There's 2 images, one of the original proposed lot split.
Yeah, right here.
So, yeah. So when this was originally done in 2019, there was a requirement to terminate the existing driveway onto Larkin. Has that been done? And
yeah, I believe it has.
Okay. And then with the extension of the private drive, I remember we had to have a hammerhead or some way for emergency vehicles to turn around in there, but was there a requirement by the city to have it extend to where it was, or could it have ended right at the lot line as you go into the second lot that's in question right now? It could, I mean, I guess what I'm asking is, if the house pad would have been doable where the hammerhead is, could he have stopped the road before that?
Great question. No, he couldn't, because this is extended exactly, I believe, 200 feet into the lot to provide the 200 feet of lot frontage. So every lot needs to have a minimum lot size and a minimum lot frontage. And when the council wrote the private drive ordinance, they wanted to make sure we still, just like we do with a public street, require 200 feet of frontage, require that here. So that's exactly that long to provide that minimum 200 feet of frontage for this new lot 2.
Okay. All right. So that's, I guess that was my question. So for him to move a house from where his original proposed site was, he'd have to move it to the other end of the hammerhead. He couldn't shorten that private road in any way.
Correct.
Okay.
Is it okay if I just make a comment?
I'm not seeing who's speaking. Is that Nate?
Yeah, I have a comment that specifically addresses the council member's question.
Sure. Go ahead.
I could have built that hammerhead, and Kendra, correct me if I'm wrong, but I could have built that drive another couple hundred feet down, and then that hammerhead wouldn't be interfering with my setback. However, at some point, I think we can all see here that I'm building a lot of road on my own private property that nobody can trespass on. Nobody's allowed to use this road except me. And it would be just simply building more road so that I can place my house where I want to place it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think first blush, I'm certainly open to feedback from other people. It seems like a reasonable request to me. It is regrettable, I think, that I think if we had thought through the impact of the 200 yard of frontage or 200 feet of frontage, we might have thought about that a little bit differently, going into a lot and not extending past it. But not being on the council, then I can't really speak to the thought process.
Well, but to that point, Jeremy, the applicant is the one that proposed the 200-foot road right away into his lot.
True.
You know, he's the one that said, this is the house pad and this is where it goes. So he had knowledge of the zoning requirements at the time he brought the application forward 2 years ago to split the lot. So in that regard, it's kind of hard to understand why he didn't have the foresight at that time to plan, and now he's asking us to make a change to accommodate his change in plans.
Yeah, that's the other side of the coin. I agree.
And that
Yes.
does get a bit into the, when you're looking at a variance, the standard of not creating the issue yourself. Go ahead, Manoj.
Oh no, so I guess I wanted to take a comment here. So I think Alan's right. I know we wish we all had the foresight in a lot of decisions we make. We also know that hindsight is 2020. So based on the variance request right now in front of us, and this might be my opinion, I'm happy to debate this a little bit more. I haven't heard from a couple of council members, but I don't see how granting this affects anything that the city wants to get done or affects our plans, and it's reasonable enough. It's one of the things that we've talked about of being adaptive. I know our rules say one thing, and can we make variances, and that's why there's an option to make a variance. So I am on the fence of if the neighbors benefit, if the house owner benefits, the city doesn't pay anything for it, why not, right? Now it goes back to, are we going to work on more variances across the city? And my answer hopefully is no. But on this particular discussion or request, I think it's a reasonable request because there's been a change in plans. So that's where I am at with this. Would love to hear a little bit more from the others on this one.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm a little bit on the fence on this one too. Some of the things I think about here. One, we need to revisit shared driveways. We run into these kind of problems all the time. If not for the need for the shared drive, like it's not a shared driveway. If not for the need, the private drive need created this problem. It's not a problem that was caused by anything but the need to have a private drive in order to make two lots here. So it was a self-made issue. Part of me thinks like, I don't care that much, no one's going to be back there. And it'll impact this lot and the other one. And the other one said, I don't, that's fine. But one of the things that we have to think about when we allow variances is if you allow a variance every time when presented with something that doesn't fit the definition of when you allow a variance, what's the point of having codes in the first place? And so a test for whether you allow a variance is not, does it bother anybody? Does it hurt anybody? Who cares? And when we come across these variance situations, I have reservations only because it sets precedents for we get a little loose with them. That's why we ended up with Lennar coming in and wanting 50-foot lot sizes because we had granted variances before, and I'm not it has nothing to do with this, but it kind of does in an ancillary way. Because we had allowed them before, all of a sudden it became acceptable to squeeze the lot sizes down. And so you set precedents for abandoning the code. And you just got to be careful with that. And you got to make sure that it fits the requirements, or you step back and change the code. And when I'm totally open to changing the code. But I have reservations about granting a variance to a situation where another variance if not for the thing that caused the problem, there wouldn't be able to be a house back here. And so it's a little bit, it's not, I guess I have trouble granting a variance when it's just an inconvenience caused by the applicant in the first place.
Right. Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you're thinking there, John. One thing that just kind of popped into my head there, though, is if this is an area of the code that we're potentially looking at addressing, which it sounds like you're in favor of at least looking into it, and I would be. Does that have an impact on how much of a issue it could be by setting a precedent if it's something that we might be addressing, in the future, and to where this wouldn't be a variance that's requested potentially, or just hypothetically, kind of thinking out loud here, but for one.
Well, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. Yep. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt, but to your point, if you're thinking about this may be something to address in the future, because it's only really be affecting one person in this case, you got to remember we have a development on Rolling Hills Road that has a private road in it now, with 3 homes on it. Who's to say a variance doesn't come forward to move a house down to 12 foot off that private road?
It's a valid point.
Not to say variances create a precedence, but it may create an expectation or an anticipation of approval.
Right.
So there could be a slippery slope in some of that.
It can create a precedence in unequal application of the law. If there are 4 reasons to grant a variance and we don't follow the law, it's easy to come later and say, these clowns just make it up as you go along. And we're held to a standard where sometimes our opinion doesn't matter so much as the equal application of the law. And so we all may think that this doesn't matter. Who cares? It's at the end of a road. No one's going to go back there. But we have to uphold and be guided by the law that guides whether variances are permitted. Otherwise, we get in a whole bunch of trouble when somebody asks for a variance later, and we are found to be a council that does not apply the law equally to all circumstances. So if we do not allow a variance in the future, and we weren't in this case, we're not guided by the law as to when you allow variances, they can say this council is inconsistent and it's an unequal application. And so it's one of those deals, to me, sometimes we get into where even though we may not like something, we have to go by the letter. And so I think the debate is whether or not those 4 qualifications has the applicant proven that they should get a variance.
Right.
Rather than our opinion on on whether it matters that much. Does that make sense to anybody, or am I
Yes,
crazy?
absolutely. No, it absolutely does.
You're the
That
law
makes
guy.
sense. So let me put it this way then, right? I don't think anybody cares what each of us individually think. Our opinions don't matter versus what we're trying to do here as a council for the city, right? So I think Alan brings up a good point. There's a private drive with 3 homes there, and what happens then, right? With respect to unequal application of the law. So I guess the way I look at this personally is the totality of it. So if everybody on that shared drive who would ever use that shared drive and every home on that property, if they were in favor of making that change and there's nobody else affected, and I think that goes back to the philosophy of the city. And I get where you're coming from, that if the law is written, you uphold it, and if the variance is required, there's guidances for that variance. But it also goes back, so for me, it's an issue of, the law, we don't exist for the law, right? The law exists for us, and we as a council, we are not able to make changes to it. We see a problem, we are not able to adapt to it quickly. We just stamping and saying red or black. So I still think, since there's nobody else affected, it's not what I think. It's like, because there's nobody affected. If there are if the shared drive could get extended, if there's other stakeholders we should be worried about, obviously what you're saying makes 100% sense to me. But if this is it, and I'm happy for anybody to correct me if I'm missing a stakeholder here who would get negatively impacted by this, even if one, right? It's not a majority thing. It has to be all or nothing, for me. So that, I wanted to call that out, and I know that what we are trying to do here, we're trying to keep order and follow the guidelines we already have established. If not, go through the proper process to make those changes. But we still have a decision to make with the application in front of us.
I think the important distinction for this particular application that differs from the Rolling Hills example is, for the Rolling Hills example, you have other property owners with their homes along what is serving as a road. In this case, because it's the last property on the drive, I think the impact is different. And I think the legal trigger that I'm seeing what the league gives us is reasonableness. Because it can't extend, and because it's not affecting anybody downstream from Larkin, it seems reasonable in this case to treat it as being acceptable. Whereas you wouldn't say, if there was a middle home along a private drive somewhere else, you wouldn't want a home 2 feet away from a road that actually is serving as a road for other people. So I see one distinction there that I think is a reasonable line to draw. The only thing that I see that potentially violates the guidance from the league is on the uniqueness point, where it was drawn this way at the request of the applicant originally, apparently 2 years ago. I think essential character is still preserved. And I don't find this as being contradictory to the goals of the comprehensive plan or the zoning ordinance, because there isn't any other impact outside of this one property. It's still a rural parcel. It'll still function as a rural parcel. So I think our discussion needs to hinge on, do we consider this unique or not? And then based upon our collective reading of that particular point, I think that would guide our decision.
Yeah. I mean, that's again a good summary, Jeremy. Does someone want to take a crack at a motion, see where we are on this, or?
Mr. Mayor, just
Yeah.
prior to that, I just texted Kendra real quickly, and if the council would want to approve this, we would need some findings of facts on how they do meet all those difficulties. And then we would likely have to bring that back to you, because we'd have to draft a resolution, which we cannot do on the spot. So you'd have to provide some findings of fact for us to then draft. Is that correct, Kendra?
That's correct. We'll bring it back exactly as Brad said at the next meeting as required by law, but we would need very specific direction about, in particular, the practical difficulties and the uniqueness. Those are the two that the Planning Commission and staff found were not met.
Kendra, question regarding the uniqueness. Would the uniqueness of the fact that this is a private drive only used by one property and one homeowner be unique enough?
I think the council can make whatever findings they want. I just need direction about what to put in the resolution.
I would say that would certainly speak to it, and if we all felt that way, I mean, I think that would satisfy that requirement of uniqueness side of things. Then it would just be down to if we think it meets the practical difficulties overall.
And again, the league's test that they give us for that, the 3 parts to practical difficulties are reasonableness, uniqueness, which is restated, and essential character. If we opt to approve, I think the rationale for reasonableness would be that because this is the terminus of a private drive, there is, it's not out of place to have a driveway close to a home, and it's functioning as a driveway in this specific instance, given that it's the terminus of the road. So in that fashion, it would be reasonable. On uniqueness, if we were to approve it, I think it would probably be on the grounds that the difficulty that is encountered is to try to place the home in concordance with the natural slope of the terrain. And then on essential character, I think we would just speak to the secluded nature of the parcel and its separation from other major roads retains the rural character that the ordinances are intended.
Mr. Mayor, if I can just jump in, just from a staff perspective, just pointing out the second part, uniqueness, does specifically talk about not caused by the landowner. We have testimony tonight that the homeowner can build a different house and will if they don't approve this. So I just, from a staff point, I haven't heard anything, maybe Kendra, you have, that there are slope difficulties, that there are geographic difficulties. Have there been evidence of geographic difficulties, Kendra?
I have not heard that.
Yeah, the only point that I saw to that effect was in his letter, where he talks about if he wants to build it with a walkout basement. There's not a agreeable topography for that unless you go much farther back. But it's not.
And Brad, just to make sure procedurally I understand, if what Jeremy recapped or summarized, if the council did find that that was viable enough, that would be good direction for the staff to move ahead, right?
Yeah, but the topography of the land, the wanting to build a walkout basement is not an issue with regards to the variance of the setback. That's more of an issue to the style of home that he wants to build. So, I mean, we can talk about how to rewrite the variance, but but if that's what you want on the table, then I think we need to take a motion and vote down the denial of the variance and then make a motion to accept the variance. So I'd propose, if you want to have that discussion, I'll make a motion to deny the variance as proposed by the Planning Commission, and then we can vote that up or down and then move forward with the other option.
I'll second that.
Did you say deny the variance or deny the resolution?
No, the resolution is for denying the variance, and that's what I'm making a motion for.
So it's a two-parter. So you're trying to, if this part, if this part fails, then we don't have to worry about the crafting of the other one.
Well, we'll still have to craft it, but we're basically, by voting down the denial, we're forced to accept the variance. Now you have to figure out how you're going to do it.
Yeah, but if we don't vote it down, then that's the end of the discussion.
So-
If two
Yeah.
people vote to deny the denial, that's not enough.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just clarify, I think, just to clarify the motion,
Please.
Councilmember Schultz, you are having a motion to approve the resolution as drafted by the Planning Commission denying the variance request.
Correct.
So if this is approved, which means it's denying it, it's over with. If this fails, then you would need to craft something for approval.
Correct.
Are we all on the same page?
Yeah, we've had a second, I think.
Yep. Okay. And McKee, aye. Bottoма,
Aye.
Nichols,
Just to confirm, I means we are voting to deny the variance.
correct.
Correct.
Okay, I'll go nay.
Schultz,
Aye.
Thomas,
Nay.
that carries 3-2. It was the long way around there, but it was good. Good job navigating that, everyone. Yeah. So we will go on to the concept plan for Sherbert storage at 22400. Don't have the full address, I'm sorry, but the concept plan for the storage. And I will hand it off to Kendra.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a concept plan for a self-storage or mini storage site off of Highway 55. It is a concept plan for 5 new storage buildings on a 5-acre site, totaling 61,200 total building square feet. The property now has an existing home and accessory buildings, but it is guided light industrial and zoned urban reserve. It is located in the 2030 to 2035 sewer staging plan, the 3rd stage of our sewer staging plan. Next slide. You can see the site, the buildings on the east side of the site is a driveway that extends south across 3 separate parcels. It is our understanding that there's a private driveway agreement in place. We haven't seen that yet, but that provides access to the site, and the applicant is proposing to continue to allow that access to Highway 55. Next slide. So this concept shows the continuation of the use of that private drive from 55 up to the site. The site has the 5 buildings oriented. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Conceptually showing the required stormwater treatment pond in the northeast corner of the site. The building that you see, the large building that you see shadowed, just for reference, is the Medina Electric building off of Highway 55, if you're familiar with that. Next slide. So in order to move forward with the request, the applicant would need to rezone the property from urban reserve to light industrial. That's consistent with the underlying land use. However, the zoning ordinance says development is not allowed in the urban or in the I-1 zoning district prior to availability of sewer and water. And the reason for that is to ensure that when sewer and water gets extended, it's for development that will pay for the sewer and water. If you have development that exists already, it's hard to provide assessment costs to them because they may say, look, we've already got it, we don't need it. And that makes the cost of extending that sewer pipe through an area and water more expensive and more difficult. In this case, the applicant says it's a mini storage building, and so sewer and water are not required. In order to proceed without sewer and water, based on our ordinance standards, he would require a variance to proceed in advance of municipal sewer and water. And again, the burden of proof is on the applicant to show that there is a hardship. So this is a really important concept for this concept to get feedback about this idea and whether the council supports that variance to allow him to proceed. I will note that there is another self-storage building off of 19 Park Place Storage that was started before we dreamed of sewer and water in Corcoran, prior to the MUSA. And so that was constructed. And the council did grant a variance for the final phase of that project, based in part on the finding that it was the continuation of an existing project that was allowed to proceed with well and septic in advance of sewer and water. So there is a different situation in that it was an existing business that was expanding, but there is some that I want to provide that for some context. Next slide. The application would also require a conditional use permit. Self-storage are conditional uses in the industrial district, and also a site plan to go with that. Just looking quickly, it's a concept plan, so we don't have a lot of information, but generally the setbacks appear to be met. It is an existing lot of record with no frontage on a public street. Access to Highway 55, as I said, is via that existing private drive. And the applicant has reached out, at least preliminarily, to MnDOT. MnDOT would need to approve a change in the access, and it would be a change to go from a single family home access to an industrial access. But the information the applicant has shared suggests that MnDOT would not require improvements to Highway 55 for that. This is a strange piece of property in that the last property is in the city of Medina between Highway 55 and this property. So because that driveway crosses property in Medina, Medina will require joint approval with the city for access improvements. And the fire or the public safety department will require access improvements. They require expansion of that 20-foot private drive to 26 to comply with the fire code requirements. That allows fire trucks to meet each other and pass, which is particularly important when sewer and water is not available and they need to bring in water trucks. As I mentioned, we don't have yet proof of the access rights. We want to make sure that that existing easement can be used for an industrial use. It crosses, like as I said, 3 other properties, and so those owners have some rights and potential limitations. So we need to see that as this project moves forward. There is also a future Highway 55 frontage road that's planned to connect Pioneer and Rolling Hills Road. And if and when that road is built, access to this site would be from that new frontage road, and access to Highway 5 would be eliminated. So the next slide shows the sketch plan from the Southwest District plan. And you can see in the bottom right, this sort of, you can see the furthest right road is Rolling Hills Road for context right there. And if you go west, Jessica, there's a new, that purple one right there is the site we're talking about, the next one to the west. Next slide. That's not planned, but it is planned, excuse me, but not on a capital improvements program.
Wait, what year is that from? Did I see 2003?
Yes, we have not updated the Southwest District plans or the Northeast District plans since 2004.
Okay.
So we updated the downtown design guidelines or the Southeast District guidelines, but not those. That is adopted as Appendix A of the zoning ordinance. And that doesn't provide a lot of context for design for this district, but does have a couple of design guidelines for new development, saying that site design and landscaping should work to preserve the existing topography of the area, that commercial uses should be designed as high quality business parks with appropriate office, commercial and light industrial uses, and that back to the frontage road, that direct access to Highway 55 should not be permitted, and that new access roads should be provided. So just some context for the district. Next slide. The architecture, the applicant provided, and I included these in your packet, some examples of existing buildings they've done in other communities for reference. They haven't designed this building at concept, so we don't have any specific building details, but they would need to comply with the ordinance standards. The examples they provided appear to comply with our ordinance standards. Landscaping, we didn't get any details. A minimum of 62 trees are required. We do think that buffering from the residential properties to the north and east is important, and that can be done in a lot of different ways. Certainly, this is guided industrial. The intent is not to require that we can't see it, but with good building design, no long blank walls, some landscaping, potentially some berming, there are things that we can do to soften the industrial impact next to those residential homes. So feedback for the applicant about what the council's expectation for that is would be helpful. Next slide. So again, you can see that this is butting up on the east very close. In fact, there may be some encroachment from the driveway of the home on the east. And then the homes of the north on Horseshoe there do back up to the property as well. So some feedback would be valuable for the applicant, I suspect. Next slide. So tonight, the applicant is just providing this concept to get initial feedback from the council. The next step, as I said, would be a 4-part application, a rezoning to light industrial from urban reserve, a conditional use permit for the mini storage self-storage, which is how it's defined in our code, site plan approval, and a variance to allow development prior to municipal services. And you do have a high level of discretion with those, and so the applicant really is hoping to get some feedback tonight. Next slide. Any feedback that you provide is advisory only. It's non-binding, but it will be used by the applicant as they decide how to proceed forward. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions or just open it up for conversation to provide feedback to the applicant.
Perfect. Thank you, Kendra. Does anyone have anything they'd like to start off with?
A quick question or a discussion. If we go back to the 4-step process, so, going through this process, right? So the rezoning goes first. So procedurally, does the council first vote to get it rezoned, and then they come back for the conditional use permit, and then the site plan meetings? Is that, and one if it's completed, it's not conditional, right? So the reason I'm asking that is, like, if I rezone and then they decide not to do a mini storage, will it flip back? Like, how does that work?
Well, the applicant could come in with just a rezoning request, or they could come in with all 4 applications at once, which is what I believe this applicant would like to do.
That answer. So, my guidance would be to have it together. I would not rezone without knowing for sure that it's going to be the mini storage, especially since we don't have soil and water there yet. Thanks for that.
Anything else? This one?
Yeah, I think, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead.
We've had 3, one was pulled, but 3 very, very significant applications we've looked at today where the neighbors are a significant piece of the decision tree and the impact on the neighbors. And you can see that there are 3 potential pretty big, could be a potential issue on the north side. And I think particular attention has to be paid to those plots and how they're impacted by the storage facility. I actually, when I was looking at the pictures, and I thought, well, they look like pretty nice houses, but that's part of the consideration is, what kind of, how's it going to impact those 3 people? I think is going to be a pretty big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say regardless of what goes in there, a huge priority would be making sure that the screening, like Kendra mentioned, to the existing homeowners on the north and to the east there, that would be a big priority to me to make sure that is addressed adequately, because that would have an impact on how much of an impact that they're feeling from whatever goes in there. But that's just kind of more general feedback on this. Let's see here.
There's pretty significant, and when you look at the contour lines, are they going up or down?
They're going down towards the back of the property to the north.
They're going down. So the houses are going to sit below grade.
Houses meaning you mean the buildings?
No, the buildings on the north side,
Gotcha.
the north
Yep.
and east side.
Gotcha.
I think the highest points to the property just to the south.
Yeah, about 10 feet of grade change going from the rear residential lot up to that building.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I have a couple of questions
Go right ahead.
for staff. So this is geared towards commercial rental, right? It's geared towards businesses that want to run an operation out of these 35 units. Is that correct?
That is my understanding. I believe that that is true based on the narrative.
But they're not providing, are they providing water and sewer to all 35 units?
They are not. They are only providing heat and electric.
So if I'm running an operation out of this unit and I have an employee that's working there, how's he going to use the bathroom?
Oh,
Is he going to
I
go to
don't-
the tree next to the neighbor's house, or?
I misunderstood your question. As I understand it, as the applicant explains it, it's not office space, but it's an electrician who stores his equipment here, picks it up in the morning, and then goes to the job site. It's not, I believe, office space. I see that the applicant's engineer is on. I don't know if the applicant is on tonight, but it's more for, daily pickup for an electrician or a plumber, is how he described it to us.
Right, but even those people have sometimes run some small operation out of their unit, right? They're plumbers building a water flue system or whatever for in-floor heat, and to do all that instead of doing it on site, they do it in their shop, and then they take the board to the site and install it or whatever. You've got multiple employees coming and going, picking up. I kind of find it hard to believe that their narrative to the county was that they were going to have 10 car trips per day into a 35 unit facility that's all commercial. So that would be one of my concerns, is the amount of traffic coming in and out and not having any type of bathroom facilities. And then you mentioned something too about not providing fire suppression. Did I read that correct too?
That is correct.
So I'm assuming there's probably not going to be covenants as to what's being stored in these buildings or what operations are being run out of them. If a fire starts in unit 1, it wouldn't take much for it to jump from building to building and go all the way through the unit. If there's no type of fire suppression required, I'm surprised, because in a commercial building in town, wouldn't we require a new building to have fire suppression?
Well, the building code does not require fire suppression for every building. And so there are some different ways to manage firewall depending on the type of space that it is. And we certainly haven't completed our building permit review, but the applicant believes that this building can be constructed under the building code with no need for fire suppression.
Okay.
There's someone raising their hand.
Well, just let me, if you don't
Let
mind.
Alan finish, yeah.
We talked about Park Place. Does Park Place have commercial units? Do businesses run out of Park Place?
They do not. Our code actually says it can only be used for dead storage. And so it's important to define what running a business out of it is. Our code does not allow you to have office space in a self-storage building. So you can store, your personal vehicles, You can store your treasures. Personally, in this case, it would be your work equipment, extra stock or supplies, but you could not, under our code, office out of there.
So if I was an electrician, let's say, and this is my primary, instead of having my truck and all my equipment at my house, at least one of these spaces, I could have all my supplies to do my work, my truck there. I could drive my personal vehicle there, drop that off, pick up my truck, and I could basically have all my files and my computer and whatever else I had there too, correct? Because I'm not running an office for actual customers to come into.
But that's not what dead storage only, meaning you could not have your computer and files there. You have to do that at home.
Okay.
That's the
All right.
term that's been in the code for a while. Not a big fan of the term dead storage, but that's the term we use in our code.
Okay, well, thank you.
Your point about the fire suppression, that's something that jumped out at me though too, right off the bat, as a little concerning. I guess I don't know what is typical for particularly this type of storage, if that's not something you often see, or if it is, but it stood out to me at least. But Scott, I believe, had his hand raised, and I believe is he the engineer?
Correct.
Jessica, if you want to unmute him.
Yes. Yep. Scott,
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
Mr. Mayor and Council, thank you for reviewing our project here. I do have Craig Sherbert is with me in my office here. Couple of things to follow up on we've done this in a number of different spots. We've got 3 other sites in the local area, 2 in Rockford and 1 up in St. Michael. Similar type buildings, similar dimensions, similar construction. We have a total of 57 existing units between all the sites, and these aren't mini storage. And I think you're picking up on that. Kendra has explained it pretty well as to how they function, the type of users that typically use them. There is no office in any of them. There's no bathrooms provided. And the history that we have with the 57 units tells us that, the type of users that we get, they don't need them. The building classification qualifies as an S2 storage. And so there are restrictions on that. Owners and tenants have to comply or understand that, they need to comply with S2 storage requirements. That's how the buildings are permitted through building permit. That's considered a low hazard materials designation. And with that, any required fire separations, that kind of stuff that are through the structure are incorporated and improved as part of the building permit plans. So it is our understanding that we do comply with all the fire codes and everything according to the building code with this S2 storage designation. So as far as the overall site layout and screening, yes, we as far as screening to the north and to the east to the residential, we are definitely have that as something that we understand needs to be addressed. Our layout there, you can see our center building is set back with some additional green space there. We had some extra space there. We can, we can use that to help increase the amount of screening that we do in there, create some character with it with our building configuration as well. So I think we're doing our part here to end up with a project with nice buildings, nice architecture, but functional for a desired use in the area. And we'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Scott.
May I ask Mayor Scott a question?
Go ahead.
So is there a site attendant or is there somebody checking on these buildings periodically throughout the day or week, or how does that work? Is it fenced or gated in any way to restrict access?
Once a day, but it's not restricted access.
There's no restricted access and no fence. At most, it would be a once a day visit by an owner's representative, but that's not even every day.
The owner of the facility. That's what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Is that it?
Yeah,
Sorry. Yep, that's it.
is the 20 trips per day figure based on your experience on the locations?
It is. Yeah, like I said, we have 57 other units.
Some we don't see for a week.
Craig just made the comment that there's, the type of users vary. Some of these units don't even get visited for a week at a time. Yeah, that is where that comes from, is our experience with the other units.
A lot of antique cars.
You could, I'd make a request that since you have three of these, send us those addresses so we can go. I'd like to see what they're all
that'd
about.
be great.
Yeah, we definitely can do that. I think we also forwarded some pictures, some aerial pictures, some drone pictures of the various sites as well. I don't know that made it into your packet, but I don't know if it's possible for staff to forward those on or make them available. We can definitely get you the locations.
That would be great. And if we have those, if we could get those sent out to everyone, that would be helpful. I'm sorry, I think I interrupted someone.
I was just going to say that he provided information on like elevations of some, but I think the only one had an address on it. That was the St. Michael facility, but that only looked like it was a single building facility in a commercial area or industrial area. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes. St. Michael is a single building.
So do you have other facilities that are multi-building facilities?
In Rockford has, what do you got there?
Four different buildings.
4 different buildings, 2 sites, 4 different buildings.
So would this be your largest single site facility?
At the present time, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I think market demand is showing that this is a desired need, and this won't be the only. This won't be the last.
We got one in Shakopee.
Craig has just indicated he's also pursuing one in Shakopee here.
I guess my question would be if the trips was calculated, that the estimated number of trips was calculated from these other sites that seem to be pretty different in terms of how many buildings and if they're on different sites. How are those numbers calculated, I guess, and do you think that would still be an accurate representation of the actual traffic you'd have on a bigger site like this with more storage units?
That we took into consideration.
Well, it was calculated based on the number of units that are at each site, and by visiting, or paying attention to what's going on at the site, then calculating out, applying that same ratio to the number of units that are proposed here.
Perfect. Thank you.
This is Manoj here. I had a question to maybe staff. So as I was going through this, and one of the things that jumped at me, so while we are discussing the kind of facility it is, I think one of the major consideration is, do we want to approve or at least give them guidance? Yep, we would be open to something like this prematurely. So before city water and sewer is there, so basically they're not paying for it. If they had come with this application after city sewer and water was available, or the access was available, they would pitch in for those services, even if they don't end up providing water and sewer need or having water and sewer needs on the site. Is that a fair way of putting it?
I would like to defer to Brad, who is more familiar with our sewer and water policy than I am, but I think that's correct. I think that's correct.
They would be responsible for trunk fees, certainly per acre, even if they did not currently connect to the system.
Okay. So that's one of the considerations we have today is, do we want to forego of that trunk fees and then spread the rest around? That I would assume the burden would shift to the other acres along the access points.
Mayor and Council, there's a couple ways to address that. I think with Park Place, Kendra, I think we wrote it that they'd have to pay those fees when service became available in the future. So I wouldn't focus too much on that. We still could require payment in the future as a condition.
Perfect. Thanks for answering that.
All right. Sorry. Anything else? I'm,
The one thing that concerns me most as I look at the graphic here is the proximity of that home to the east. So I would want to see some pretty significant screening and barriers for those folks. And I'm sure you're already planning on putting something together, but I would encourage you to err on the side of caution there. And do your best to be a good neighbor to those people with your proposal.
And I guess I think it's not quite as zoomed in the packet there. I don't know if there's any other homes along the access further, I guess a little further south there before you get to 55. I would assume not, but it would be the same thing if there were. Again, just screening in general to the homes around there would be of utmost importance to me.
Yeah. As we discussed before, it's always tricky when you've got industrial zoning immediately adjacent to residential areas. And that's been a concern for a number of the councilors. It seems like as far as industrial uses go, this one is relatively moderate in its intensity, which I think is a good thing. But it's still a concern. So we've talked in the past about what do we do to have adequate separation and buffering between adjacent zones of different intensities. We don't really have a policy on that yet, other than what is currently in the code. Personally, what I would like to see us adopt at some point is some kind of a system where we consider different levels of screening as providing different, well, it's similar to what Rochester has in their current code, where there's sort of a point requirement, and you can meet the point requirement with different structures or landscaping or trees and shrubs and so on. So it's kind of up to the topography of the site, but you are required to achieve a certain level of density of the barrier. We're not anywhere near that today, but I think I would be creative and maybe think about berming, especially on that east side if it works in the site, and probably going beyond the minimum tree caliper and height if you're going to use some kind of a vegetative screen instead.
Maybe that guy will end up on council someday, huh, Jeremy?
Maybe.
Jeremy, for anybody paying attention, this is all such personal experience for Jeremy on shading, and it's why he knows the Rochester codes on shading and point system.
Yeah, I've been in those shoes before.
Well, yeah, to Jeremy's point, I think the biggest issues people will have will be the amount of traffic coming and going, the sight and sound, illumination at night will be an issue for people. So think about that. If the topography of the land is that, so if it's higher on the south side, maybe some of that earth gets moved to the north side, creating berms, using it to level off the property and creating berms, and wherever that the stormwater collection ponds are, take that soil and use that to create berming and whatnot. Because if they're technically not allowed to run the business out of there, you're still going to have trucks coming and going. You're still going to have trucks backing up. So you're going to hear the sounds of those backup warning sirens, going off, and somebody's probably going to be loading some pallet with a bobcat on trailer or whatever, who knows. But at least we shouldn't be hearing, equipment being run all day long in these sites, right? It's not designed for that. That's what it sounds like. So those are my biggest concerns when you put a facility like this in an area with homes.
Yeah, well said. I think to kind of both of your points, for an industrial use, this is a lighter one, I guess, than what potentially could go there in another, if it was a different type of facility, and that I think benefits something like this. It's less of an impact on the surrounding residential properties. So I'm in favor of that aspect of it. But if hopefully that provided some direction. Is there anything else that we didn't specifically address that they need from us today?
I think that's good feedback, Council.
Okay, great. Then I will move on to the proposed work plan for residential zoning ordinance updates. Hand it off to Kendra.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I was not at the work session, but I have talked with Brad, and it's my understanding that updating the residential district standards is a priority for the council. And so I think to move forward, I've put together a work plan that I think at least is a starting point, acknowledging that it depends what we hear and the schedule and plan could change. But my thought would be to schedule individual meetings with each of the 5 council members one-on-one to hear what your priorities are for this plan. And then come back in a work session together and summarize those discussions and provide a new work plan that could be more detailed based on what we've heard. At this point, I'm not entirely sure if it's uses or if it's more performance standards, and that's why I think that individual meetings in that work session are really important in that project scoping piece. And then once we determine the work plan, I think I would recommend that we do a work session with the Planning Commission. They certainly deal with sort of the meat of this on a regular basis. And so I'd like to meet with them sooner rather than later in the plan. This is a pretty stripped down plan. So we have that one joint meeting, then come back with a draft ordinance for you, and then schedule some sort of a public input. I fear we may still be virtual, so thinking about how to make ordinance stuff interesting for folks. Haven't quite defined that yet, but would like to do some sort of a public input process. And then come back one more work session to make sure we hear the public inputs, finalize the draft, and then go to the public hearing process, Planning Commission and Council. And so it doesn't seem like it's a speedy process maybe, but this is a pretty speedy process put together, kicking off in February, if we get the direction tonight, and then hopefully wrapping up with approval in August. Again, very possible it could change, but that's about the quickest I think we can get through the process. And with that, I'm estimating that project cost is about $13,000 of our planning budget.
Okay. Thank you, Kendra. I think we clearly stated that this is one of our big goals as a council to look into this and to address some of these issues. I think obviously there's details we need to figure out about it, but I really like the initial plan here. I definitely agree. We want to have a work session with the Planning Commission at least once, if not more. And however we can engage residents just to really be a part and get input from them on this, because I think it's something that's going to require a lot of input from people. And it does make it a little tricky if we're going to still be virtual, but we'll have to play that by ear. But I think this is a good start of a plan. I'll open it up to anyone else's comments.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
I feel like let's just pretend that I agree with the concept. I agree that we've all expressed our issues and concerns with with this particular issue. And I think some people are miles ahead of the rest of it. I feel like if, I'll just say Manoj, if Manoj goes and spends about some time with Kendra, I don't get to hear what Manoj has to say about the topic. And then Jeremy spends time with Kendra, and I don't get to hear what Jeremy says, and Alan and you. So it's 5 hours or 4 hours of good ideas that I don't get to hear. And I'm not suggesting we each get an hour. But I think before we start, I would suggest we share amongst ourselves, spend time hearing all of our ideas, or a lot of them before, because Kendra's just going to have to regurgitate them to us. So I feel like we should all air our ideas in public and to each other as the beginning. So we're all advantaged to know where everybody else sits on this thing. Because ultimately, if we're going to change the code, obviously we're going to need it. It's a council-led thing. And a lot of people have already put in a bunch of time on the council side looking at the code. It was an issue. I'd prefer we have a conversation first to talk about the things that are on our mind before we go down some path. Where we all we should air our ideas to each other and then decide a path based on that conversation, rather than having Kendra try to interpret how all of us are going to feel about other people's ideas. I think Kendra should be one step after the 5 of us have a conversation. That's just me.
So are you thinking maybe we should do a work session ahead of that?
I think we should have, for me, I'll say yeah to that, but I don't care if we have an hour discussion during a council meeting. I don't see the difference between whether we have an hour discussion at 8 or 5 or 6, 5:30 or 8. Although I think we all start to run out of steam and our ideas are soft and soggy at the end of the night. But
there's that. My only other concern would be with the upcoming agenda we have in the next couple meetings. There's going to be some longer meetings, I have a feeling.
Yeah, we should say. I think we should take some time and talk amongst ourselves first before we talk to Kendra.
Okay.
What do you think about the idea of doing the work session and including Natalie and Kendra, so they can all hear those ideas in discussion as we have them?
Yeah, I think I totally agree with that.
She has a work session down listed, right, as the second point. First point being individual meetings. I suppose there she's collecting her thoughts, and that'll allow her to have a structured work session versus just a random discussion point. But I guess I'd like to see what comes out of a work session before I commit to a full-on review of the ordinances. Why not? Because maybe what comes out of the work session, we had 20 ideas coming into it, and we realize that maybe 3 are all we need, so that this doesn't become a $13,000 project. It's now only an $8,000 project.
Yeah. So I guess it would just be what's the best way to do that? Would it be to have a work session, as soon as my days are all screwed up, but we could do it before the next council meeting, just to get ideas out there, and then go into the individual meetings, and then have another work session on the 27th, like's in the plan.
I kind of like her approach though too, in that the individual meeting, she can vet out what you guys are thinking individually and have a more detailed conversation, and then we can have that structured work session together where all those ideas can be represented to everybody.
Mr. Mayor, just going to jump in, man, just because it's as a tail on what Councilmember Schultz just saying, that's where I see the value actually of the initial meetings at first. So council members can talk to Kendra, here's what I'm thinking, and she can ask, what do you mean by that? Oh, well, this is how we handle that, just so you know. And I think you would actually do a good job of narrowing the focus of what you want to talk about as a group versus everyone starting with just, I'm going to start here, and then we have to educate everybody on their idea. I think there's a lot of value with Kendra vetting out things with you individually beforehand. But again, it's your meetings and your schedule.
And if I have an option, I think I like the plan just because I think if we start getting into a common meeting and start, making points, we starting to debate each other, better make it. I mean, not in a negative way, but more about spending time explaining. And we are, by now we know that we are a group that talks a lot. So yeah, I think we get more done in the first meeting with the one-on-ones with Kendra. Just list the things down and she gets what we are trying to say because this is her life. And then come back to a work session where we are like getting everybody up to speed on what we are thinking. We're still going to debate all the topics that we listed down for a discussion. But I feel like it'll be most productive and efficient if it's one-on-one initially. But I can work with either plan. And just my thoughts.
Yeah, I would agree that I could do it either way. If we just stick with what's on the plan as is, we could still, let's say at the next meeting, to John's point of being able to talk about it at a council meeting, if there's a couple ideas that we want to get out there and bounce off each other at the next meeting when there's time, we can do that as well and kind of, do it both ways and get the best of both worlds there. So I'm okay with going forward with the plan as is. And if there's any sort of big issues that we want to try to bounce off each other in person, we try to do that at the next council meeting. Or if something drastically changes, we could always try to schedule a work session between now and then.
Yeah, I guess I don't care either. I just want to make sure that our work session is productive when we get into it and we're not going off in 800 tangents. Right. And then, like, to Brad's point, we have to all get educated on the why and where with the simple questions.
Yep. So I'd say we go forward with the plan as is with the one-on-ones first, and then do the work session after that. And like I said, we can bounce ideas off each other in the time being at council meetings if something comes up. So I'll make a motion to initiate the ordinance update as presented in the plan.
Second that.
Okay, I was gonna say, okay. Any further discussion on it?
We're just initiating to go forward with the plan, right? We're not approving the fee proposal or any agreement to.
Correct. I'll confirm with Brad, but correct, right?
Mr. Mayor, there certainly would be fees incurred to start going, so we would be committed to incurring fees until we get each and every point.
But not the 13,000.
No.
296.
Yeah. Okay.
It's per hours utilized, so it's how efficient you all want to be.
Right.
I just want to raise one concern that I've got as we embark on this, not necessarily related to the plan specifically, but as we start to think about how ordinances might change, we might start to see an acceleration proposal as people try to get things in before anything gets modified. So we might want to think about what steps we might want to take as a way to preempt that so that we don't commit ourselves to development under old rules that we are trying to improve.
Good point. Okay, well, we have a motion and a second, so let's go ahead and do a vote on that unless there's anything else we want to add. That's a good point, Jeremy. McKee,
I want to discuss one thing quick.
Go ahead.
I think that I guess I'm going to say that I think that there's a lot that the city council people can do and put the effort in. And I think we ran for city council to lead, and I don't want to shovel a big project onto somebody else. And I know there's a saying we need to look at ordinances, and just saying, okay, I said we need to look at ordinances and not doing anything ourselves and getting our hands dirty about it. It's disappointing. We can't just lead by telling other people to start from scratch and doing other things. And so I would hope that if there's an initiative like this, which is a humongous initiative, that the council themselves could do more work than just say, go at it, staff and consultants, and look at all the code. I know y'all have looked at the code already. And so I wish that if you have an initiative that you do more work on it rather than just shoveling it down. So I'm going to explain my no, and I'm going to vote no. And I think that an initiative like this should require more work on the people putting it together first. It's a big deal. And I don't want Kendra and Brad to be responsible for all of it.
Okay. And I would say that I agree with you. My understanding of how at least I'm approaching it is that would be the case, that we'd be doing a lot of the legwork individually on it. But I understand your point. So I think we should proceed with the vote here, though. So Nichols.
I actually would have preferred to see us go through a work session first. So I'm also going to vote no.
Okay. Schultz.
Aye.
Thomas.
Aye.
So that carries 3-2.
I didn't vote.
I thought you voted no.
I explained my vote. I didn't vote.
I apologize.
I'm not being trite. I'm just saying I should vote to make it official.
Yeah, no, I thought you did vote. I sincerely apologize.
I'm going to abstain.
Okay. Same result, 3-1 with an abstention from John. And I would say to your point, John, that I 100% agree. We need to be not just shoveling the legwork off to staff.
Wait, I'm sorry. I'm going to vote no. I didn't. Manoj planted that seed. I'm voting no.
Okay. So still 3-2.
Yeah.
I believe. If someone wants to check.
You're right,
math.
Tom.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No worries. No,
I screwed it up.
Totally fine. So same result, that does pass, but still, to your point, we need to be doing a lot of that work and the research. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to be looking into drafting at least rough drafts of ordinances so I can hand something off where it's not just address this problem. Here you go. That's something I think we should be very involved in, and I hope we all are. So I think we've covered that one to death. But if there's nothing else, we'll move on to new business, and there's a public comment opportunity. And Jessica, I'll hand it back over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. If you're interested in talking for the public comment period, you can press *9 on your phone. Otherwise, click either the participants tab or the reactions tab and click raise your hand.
And this would be the time to talk on anything of any of the items under new business. So that's the Planning Commission appointments, Parks and Trails Commission appointments, and that is it on this one.
Mayor, at this time, we don't have anyone raising their hand.
Okay. Then we will go into 10A, Planning Commission appointments. And Brad.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. Hopefully these are two quick items for you. We have staggered terms for Planning Commission members and Parks and Trails Commission members on 3-year terms. So usually 1 to 2 members of each commission terms end at the end of each year. And for 2021, we have 2 commissioners for the Planning Commission ending, Meredith Wu and Jeff Dickman. And Commissioner Dickman is elected not to ask for reappointment at this time. He's got quite a few things going on with his home life. Commissioner Wu has asked for reappointment. So the recommendation is to the council appoint Meredith Wu to the Planning Commission for a new term. that would expire on February 29th, 2024. She would get 1 extra day thanks to her leap day back over in 2024. Regarding the vacancy, we then would have a vacancy. And what I recommend is that we as staff, we post the vacancy in the upcoming newsletter that'll go out in April. And then we bring applications back to council in either late May or early June to see if we can get as many applications as possible. So that would be the process I would recommend following the appointment of only Meredith Wu if you choose to, which would leave a vacancy.
Thanks, Brad. So when, actually, quick question for you. When do the newsletters go out in April? My one concern with that is just the length of time we'd be going without appointing someone there.
Jessica can clarify, is that mid-April, Jessica?
Yes, it would be. Generally, our goal is to always have them out the first week or two in April for the newsletters to go out.
So that certainly would leave us potentially 1 member short for March and April for sure. I would say, you know, with 4 members, it's just fine. It's a recommending body. Certainly having a quorum would be really important. We could only have 1 more member miss, but we've had it before and we can coordinate. So from that standpoint, I'm confident we'll be okay, but it's up to the council. We did have 1 application received. I believe the individual actually emailed you all today. But that's the only one we have at this time that he submitted. I think he was actually attending the planning commission meeting virtually and sent it over afterwards.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think it's good to open it up for a period of time. My concern would just be the length of that, and I'd be interested to hear what everyone else has to say on that.
I would agree. I think it would be nice if we could see this filled by May, if possible. Maybe there's something we can do online for promotion instead, to not have to yoke ourselves to the April newsletter to get additional applications. I also would like us not to, fast forward past Meredith. I want to acknowledge the excellent work she's been doing on the Planning Commission. She's always extremely well prepared. She asks great questions. She brings a real artist's eye to the developments that are proposed. So I'm really thankful that she is on the commission. I think she's got a lot of additional insights that she can bring, especially as we start to work together with the Planning Commission on the ordinance updates. So I'm just really thankful that she has decided to continue in the post, and I heartily endorse her continuing.
Absolutely. Well said. Does anyone else want to, we could get into the appointment for Meredith, or if we want to handle the vacancy issue first, it's up to you guys.
I have one question on the vacancy issue. I think we did this once before when we had multiple candidates. We actually did an interview process. If we run in that situation again, are people open to going down that road? I think last time.
Alan, can you describe it so that new people know how that operates and kind of the thing that makes it difficult?
Well, I mean, generally you get these applications, and if you look at an application, it's 2 pages with 6 questions, something on it. It doesn't give you a whole lot of information. So I think I want to say the last time we had Planning Commission vacancy, we had a couple applicants to it, and I thought the mayor and Brad, didn't you do an initial round of interviews, and then we brought it back in front of the council before, in like a work session before a meeting?
Mayor and Council, we've done it both ways. I think the last time around, it was the full council in the council chambers, and we had Dean Jacobs, Dean Varenkamp, and I forget if there's a third. There might have been. So that's a fair point as far as conversation goes. Prior to that, the council was just fine with the mayor making a selection. So they kind of deferred to Ron meeting with the candidates and making a recommendation to the council. So we've done it a couple different ways.
It's challenging because you got 2 or 3 people who want to give back to the community. In that case, we had 1 spot open. And it's a volunteer position. They get paid nothing. And out of the goodness of their heart, they volunteer to help the city. And then all of a sudden they got to get interviewed by the 5 city council people and take a vote on the spot. And it's, I don't know. I think it's kind of, I don't want to say mean. They sign up to be in the running, I guess, but it's really, really hard to turn down somebody who wants to be a part of your city in such a public way. And it's heart wrenching. And I felt like crap with an S after I was done turning down somebody who'd been a volunteer with the city for 30 years. And I almost would prefer to just have the mayor and Brad get the applications, even though I don't know if that's legal, but come to us with a recommendation. So the person who wants to volunteer doesn't still has that spirit of volunteerism and doesn't get rejected in a public way.
Oh, just in a non-public way, get the rejection. I mean, I'm not, if we have a hard time getting candidates, and I totally agree with you. If we have people stepping up to volunteer, that's great. If we have multiple candidates, we got to have some type of selection process.
I get it. Yeah.
But I agree with you. I mean, if they can do it, if they want to do it behind closed doors, I trust them as well.
Same here.
The other thing I will maybe suggest, oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say that, yeah, if you have multiple applications, I'm fine with the mayor and Brad taking that call. But, you know, if you don't have multiples, then this is not an issue.
Right. I was just going to add, might be wise if it's maybe not the whole council, maybe it's the mayor and also Councilmember Nichols, who's the liaison to the Planning Commission. It still can be done in a non-public meeting. You would have 2 council members then. That might be a good way to go too.
Yeah, I like that. That works for me if it works for everyone else.
Works for me.
Yeah, let's make sure though that the full council gets to see those applications before you have those discussions. So we can at least share any concerns or questions we might want you to ask about that to that individual.
That makes sense. Perfect. So that will be, I guess, the process. I guess we didn't discuss specifically the timeline of when we're thinking, other than hopefully doing it earlier than having to wait for the newsletter. Is there a certain date we want to try to put on it now, or do we want to address it in a couple meetings and see what the applications are?
Mayor Council, we can get it posted ASAP with social media. Maybe if we give ourselves to the, end of April at least, and put it on an agenda. If at the latest, the second meeting in May, we could get somebody on for sure by June. I don't know if we get somebody on by the May meeting anyway. So maybe by waiting a little longer makes sense, and just shoot for getting them on the first meeting in June if that's acceptable to the council.
What do we see coming in before June, Brad, in terms of planning applications?
Bear with me. April, we would have that won't go back to Planning Commission. I was thinking right Hennepin. There's a minor variance. The Napa plan, April's pretty light. I don't think we have anything yet for May.
So the Napa would be the primary one. So
I believe so at this point.
Okay.
Do we post in Crow River News something like this or no?
We haven't typically, just because you have to be a Corcoran resident. And that paper goes broader, but we certainly could. There's a time frame for that too, to meet a deadline and wait a week or so for that.
Yeah, okay. I was just thinking because a lot of people don't have social media stuff out here in the city. So, but the newsletter will take care of that.
Correct.
Okay.
Quick question to you.
Go ahead.
In the past, have we considered, if we had 1 or 2 applicants rather, to just put them on the Planning Commission on an interim basis and see how they go through the planning function and how they interact with the rest of the Planning Commission members and how that works? Has that been considered?
Yeah, we did.
Go ahead.
We discussed that in the past at length about having an interim person on there, like an alternate. And it was decided at the time it really wasn't going to be that beneficial because you were giving this person all the information, asking them to have all the same expectations. And they have no vote in the commission, right? Because you want to keep the commission members to an odd number, so you make sure you get a vote and you don't have a tie out of the deal. So that's primary reason, Brad can correct me if I'm wrong, that we kind of steered away from that, is we thought, why put somebody through that to the point where they may never even take a vote.
Correct. And with that, yeah, you're an alternate per se, and you're there for a year. You were called up in June for one big meeting, but you haven't been attending and being part of the process entirely. So now you're asked to provide feedback on ordinances and code when you haven't really been part of the team the entire time. So it's a lot to ask of somebody when you also still have 4 people. It's some of this council, right? When 2 of you are gone, you still got to get the business done, and you do. And the planning commission operates the same way.
Right. Okay, I would think then that we go ahead with really getting it out on social media and any other way we can as soon as possible, and get it in the newsletter in April, and then proceed from there with Councilman Nichols and I doing the interviews with Brad if there's multiple candidates, and selecting from there. Does that work for everyone?
Yep.
Perfect. Then we'll go on to the more fun part of this. And Jeremy, you spoke very well about Meredith earlier, and I agree with everything you said. I'll just go ahead and entertain a motion to appoint Meredith Wu to the Planning Commission for a term expiring February 29th, 2024.
I want to echo those thoughts too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I worked with her for quite a while on the planning commission. I enjoyed every minute. I learned a lot from her.
Definitely.
Go out on a limb and say that the final note should be a testimony to her and how much we value her on that commission.
Absolutely. Someone want to make the motion?
I'll make it.
Nichols.
Second.
Perfect. Roll call vote. McKee, aye. Bottoма.
Aye.
Nichols.
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye.
Thomas.
Aye.
5-0. Thank you, Meredith. We obviously really appreciate the time and effort you put into it, and all you give back to your city. So thank you. We'll move on to Parks and Trails Commission appointments, and I'll hand it back to Brad. We have 2 seats that are 2 terms that are coming to an end here.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. A little easier here. We have 2 members whose terms are expiring who would like to stay on the commission, Val Nybo and Judy Strahler. I think they've been wonderful members, and staff recommends they be reappointed.
Easy enough. I wholeheartedly agree. They seem to do a great job, and I've only gotten to work with Parks and Trails a couple times officially, but I believe it was Val who told me that they're the fun group, and I no shade on the planning commission, they're also fun, but they are a lot of fun, and they do a great job of taking care of our parks and trails and all.
Is that a pun, Mayor, when you say no shade?
It wasn't, but I like it. Wasn't meant to be, but I like it.
Good guess though.
But yeah, I will go ahead and I'll make a motion to appoint Val Nybo and Judy Strahler to the Parks and Trails Commission for a term expiring February 29th, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote. McKee, aye.
We have to say nice things about these people too.
Yeah, no discussion.
I'm sorry. Let's take your time. Go right ahead.
I think Tom wants to go to bed.
I will say that I too haven't had a lot of interactions with Parks and Trails Commission. I will say I did get to listen in to the discussions about Three Rivers Park District's proposal for the Diamond Lake Trail. I thought the commission did a really good job trying to fully understand how that would develop over time. I think in the session last week before, where we discussed, or where the Cook Lake project was discussed, again, they did a really good job trying to understand the details of what the proposal entailed and trying to make a decision for the best interest of the residents who are using the trail system. And as we go into the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see more of that kind of development, probably, especially in terms of trail development, as we start to build out the trail system around the city, hopefully with Three Rivers, and as we see Bellwether getting their extension to their open space park. There's a lot of good things in the works for Corcoran Parks and Trails. So I'm appreciative of having a really good commission paying attention to this for us and making sure they're making the right decisions. And I really value both Val and Judy and all the contributions you're making to help Corcoran have a really excellent trail network and parks as well.
Yeah, I second that, and also add that all the Park and Trails people, they're a commission, but they do a ton of stuff. They're all over volunteering and making Corcoran better in so many different ways, and it's appreciated and noticed.
Yeah, we appreciate their passion and dedication to the future of the parks. You know, it'll be recognized in generations to come, the little kids playing on these fields.
Thanks for everything you do.
Absolutely. All right. So before I tried to rush, and I apologize. It wasn't intentional. But we'll go on with the vote. Then we have the motion in the second. So McKee, aye. Bottoма.
Aye.
Nichols.
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye.
Thomas.
Aye.
And as expected, another 5-0 there. Showing our appreciation for you guys. So thank you so much. Last but not least, a couple things here. We have pandemic response update from either Matt or Brad. I'm not sure. Is Matt on the call?
I gave Matt the night off, actually. So
there you go.
Figured he could use one night with mostly planning items. So I don't have much. Jessica and her team, Matt and his, Kevin and his, they do a great job keeping us going. We're still working regular hours at City Hall. And we have a preparedness plan in place we keep adapting to as conditions change, and we're doing as best we can. And I think we got a pretty good groove or a rut. I'm not sure which one it is.
There you go. Thank you.
Brad, a quick question. Did everybody get their second dosage of the vaccine? Did we see any side effects, things like that?
I probably can't talk about any of that, but those who wanted to have their shot and who were eligible did. I think there's some minor aches and pains and a few other things here and there, but beyond that, I don't want to get into medical.
Absolutely. As long as it's on track.
Yeah, I know it's starting to. I heard there's the groups are supposed to get expanded today or tomorrow, I think. So in Minnesota, so. Hopefully more people are able to get that if they want it. I know my grandmother is finally in that group, so I'm personally excited about that for her. But yeah, I don't have anything else to add. Last but not least, we have the 2021 City Council schedule. Just an overview on that, Brad.
Thanks. It's going to keep being busy, as was mentioned tonight. We have the annual reports from the commissions, the Diamond Lake Regional Trail Corridor, the code enforcement issue with Westside Tire, some discussion on our MS4 stormwater work plan, some projects, Appaloosa Woods, City Center Drive, update on the K9 program, and then our mission, vision, core strategies, and short-term goals. So, and I think I've added a couple of things since then, so it's going to be busy.
So just a light couple meetings there. Okay. Perfect. Well, thank you guys. Appreciate it. Good. Sorry.
I'm out the April 8th.
April 8th.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Oh, can I ask staff? There's one question that came to mind that I thought about it too late after on the Sherbert storage. Would you ask the applicant if there's like an hours of operation of access? I don't know that was in their narrative, and I don't think we ever talked about it. I was just curious if vehicles would be coming all hours of the day or whatnot, if that's restricted.
I will follow up and I can get back to you. Thank you. It's a good point.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a really good question. All right. I think that is it, unless anyone has anything else to add.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you guys. It was a good meeting. We got there. We talked through a few things, but we got there in the end. So yeah, I appreciate it. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
McKee, aye. Bodema,
Aye.
Nichols,
Aye.
Schultz,
Aye.
Thomas.
Aye.
All righty. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Have a good
Thank
one.
you. Good night.
night.
So
Thanks, everyone.